Methanoil alanoil treonoil seroil argine oil gloinoil alanoil seroil argine oil oysterine oil prolilagin aspartilus alucilalanil asparaginil valil methanoil glutamine oil argine oil lucil glutaminil aspartil glutamil glutaminil glutamilus alucil valil glutamini. Lysilaginil 3-anil phenylalanil 3-anilisyl tryptophilis olusil asparaginil ceril histidilosilalanilisylaginilisyl prolil prolil methanoil valoil valil aspartil aspartilusil phenylalanil glutamil aspartil methanoil oisoil aspart. Ilglycyl valilisylusilusilalanilisylusil glutamil valilusil ceril glycyl glutaminilisylusil prolil cystinil glutamil glutaminil glycylaginil original methanoil oisoil argine oil esol oil histid oil alanoil valoil alanoil asparagine oil. Salicyl glycyl 3-anilisyl phenylalanilisyl glutamil glycylaginilisylisilusilisilisyl valilasparaginilisylusil asparaginil ceril 3-anil-aspartilislusilalanil aspartil glycylaginil prolil cerilisylusilval. Ilusyl glycylusyl methanoil tryptorpoil treonoilisol oilisol oil tirasyl phenylalanil glutaminilisylusil glutamil glutamilusyl 3-anil cerilisparaginilisyl prolil glutaminilisyl glutaminil ceril. Alanil ceril valil aspartil cerilisylusil valil ceril glutamil thronil prolil cerilisylaginilisyl valil 3-anil-3-anilisylisylusil glutaminil glycylisparaginil tryptophil valil glutaminil terasyl 3-anil glycylisyl glutaminil 3-anil glycylisylusil glutamil valilisyl aspartil phenylalanil glycylisyl ceril tryptophilaginil ceril glycyl valilalanil phenylalanil histidil ceril valilisyl. Usyl histidilalaninilisylusilaginil prolil glutamilusyl valil aspartilusyl glutamil 3-anil valilisyl glycylaginil ceril asparaginilaginil glutamil asparaginilusyl glutamil aspartilalanil phenylalanil 3-anilisylusilalanil utamil 3-anil glutamilusyl glycylisylusyl prolilaginilusilusilispartile prolil glutamil aspartil valil aspartilusyl prolil aspartil glutamilusyl cerilisylusyl methanoil treonoil tyrosoil valoil alanoil glutamine oil pern. Ililanilusilysyl histidil terasyl prolilispartilysylusyl histidil asparaginil ceril 3-anil aspartil glycyl glutaminil glutamil aspartil glutamilusylusilusyl prolil glycyl phenylalanil prolil ceril phenylalanil alanil. Asparaginil ceril valil glutaminil asparaginil phenylalanilisylaginil glutamil aspartilaginil valilisylusyl phenylalanilisyl glutamil methanoil oisoil valil tryptophilislusyl glutamil glutaminil phenylalanil glutamilaginil aspartil. Lucyl 3-aniliginil glutaminil methanoil valoil glutamoil seroil asparaginilusyl glutaminil aspartilysyl terasyl glutaminil ceril phenylalanilisyl histidil phenylalanilaginil valil glutaminil terasyl glutamil methanoil oisoil argine. Ilysyl glutaminilisylusyl glutamil histidilusilisolusyl glutaminil prolil lucyl histidilaginil aspartil glycylisylusyl cerilusyl aspartil glutaminilanilusyl valilisyl glutaminil ceril tryptophilaspartilaginil valiltha. Anil cerilaginilusyl phenylalanil aspartil tryptophil histidilisylusyl glutaminilisyl aspartilysyl cerilusyl prolilalanil prolalusyl glycyl thronilusylusyl glycylalanil tryptophilusyl terasylaginilalanil glutamil valilol. Enilusylaginil glutamilysylusyl 3-anil valil glutaminil valil histidil glutamil 3-anilalanil asparaginil 3-anilisylusyl glutaminalaginilisylusyl glutaminil histidilisyl aspartilusyl. Lucyl glutaminil asparaginil 3-anil aspartilalanil histidilisylaginil phenylalanil histidil glutamilysylusyl terasylaginil 3-anilaginil ceril valil asparaginil glycylisylusyl prolil aspartil glutaminil. Usyl glutamil aspartil methanoil alanoil glutamoil arganoil penoil alanoil histidoil penilalanil valil ceril 3-anil ceril glutamilusyl histidilusyl methanoil glutamoil penoil alanoil oil glutamoil oil oisoil tyrosoil argine. Ilusilusyl cerilusilusyl valilusilalanil glutamil cerilisylusilysyl ceril tryptophilysylusilysyl terasyl glycylaginilaginil glutamil ceril valil glutaminilisylusyl glutaminilisparaginil terasylv. Alil ceril phenylalanilisylusyl glutamilasparaginil cerilisyl phenylalanil glutaminil terasyl glutamil valil 3-anil terasyl glutaminilisylusilysyl glutaminil 3-anilalanil glutamil methanoil tyrosoil valoil. Lysilalanil aspartil glycyl ceril valil glutamilalanil glutamilasparaginil valil methanoil oisoil penoil alanoil metionoil asparaginoil glutamoil treonoil 3-anilalanil glutaminil tryptophilaginil asparaginil ceril valil glutamil. Valilaginal Cyril Valilaginal Cyril Methanoil oil glutamoil valoily solucyl Cyril asparaginal tryptophyll aspartilaginal tyrosyl glycyl asparaginal 3-enol valilalenol cyrilusyl glutaminolalenol tryptophylusyl glutamilaspa. Tylenol glutamilysyl methanoil oil asparaginoil glutaminol seroil glutamoil asparaginol aspartyl phenylalenol phenylalenol asparaginal prelil histidil tryptophylusyl glutaminol histidiltha. Onilalenol methanoil asparaginoil aspartyl alanoil gloinoil asparaginoil penoil alanoil lucilisyl glutamil 3-enol cysteinyl aspartyl glutamil methanoil valoil cyriloginal aspartylusyl glutaminol glutaminolusilusilusilucilla. Sparaginal glycylaginal tryptophyllaginal glutamilusyl phenylalenol methanol glutamil valilysyl glutaminol terasilalenol glutaminil alanil aspartyl glutamil methanoil aspartoil metionoil oisoil glutamoil tyrosoil treonoil aspar. Tyl cysteinyl valil 3-enolacyl cyrilalenil phenylalanil 3-enol glutamilalanil histidilacylacylcyl cyril glutaminol prelilusyl glutamil valil cyril phenylalanil methanoil asparaginoil valoil oil isol utaminil aspartylusyl glutamil aspartylysyl glutamil glutaminolaginil valinil prelil valil methanoil aspartoil alanoil glutaminoil tyrosoil oil usyl 3-enolacyl 3-enolalanil 3-enolacyl Mile cyril prelil glutaminil glycylysyl glutamil methanoil penoil alanyl 3-enol methanoil seroil oisoil glutamoil oil 3-enolacyl valilysyl glutamil cysteinyl terasyl cyril prelilusyl irasyl glutamil cyril glutaminolusilusilysyl prelilusyl glutamilysyl glutaminol methanoil treonoil seroil penoil alanyl terasyl aspartyl cyrilusyl glycylysyl asparaginal glutamilizo. Lucilisyl 3-enol valilysyl glutamilaginil glutamilalanil glutaminil cyrilalanil phenylalanil glutaminilisyl histidil glutaminil glutamilysyl cysteinyl glutamil asparaginal cysteinyl. Isylisyl 3-enolacyl glutamilysyl glycyl cyril glutaminil cyril valil glutaminilisyl phenylalanil valil 3-enolacyl cyril asparaginil valilysyl histidil phenylalanil aspartyl glutaminil 3-enolagin. Ilysyl glutaminolaginil aspartylysyl histidil valilalanil phenylalanil glutaminil cyril methanoil valoil oisoil treonoil glycyl aspartyl tryptophylysyl histidil valil glutamil 3-enol asparaginil. Ceralaginal methanoil oisoil penoil alanoil glutamoil seroil arginilalanil glutamilysyl valilysylaginalisyl glutamil glycyl aspartyl prelil gluta. Mile glutamilysylaginal histidil 3-enol glutamil phenylalanil cyril glutaminolusyl aspartyl glutaminolaginal valilysyl asparaginal phenylalanil cysteinyl aspartyl glutamilusyl. 3-enol aspartylysyl prelil glutaminil glycylysyl glutamilalanil valilaginalisyl histidilysyl glutaminil tryptophylysyl aspartylysyl glutaminil glycyl lanil prelil terasyl histidilusyl aspatylvalil glutamilysyl asparaginalaginil phenylalanil cyril valil glutamil cysteinylaginil 3-enol glutamilysyl aspartylaginil glutam. 3-enolacyl methanoil proloil glutamoil gloinoil seroil glutamoil lysyl glutamil histidilaginil valil phenylalanil cyril aspartylysyl glycyl prolil histidilusyl cysteinyl gluta. Mylysylaginalosyl glutaminalosylysyl glutamilusyl cysteinyl valilysyl prelil valilaginal aspartyl prelil valilaginal aspartyl 3-enol prelil glycyl 3-enol cysteinyl histidil valil 3-enolacyl gluta. Mylosylaginal aspartyl cyril 3-enol terasylaginalisyl methanoil glutamoil aspartoil proloil aspartoil oisoil tryptopoil oisoil aspartyl terasyl 3-enol cyrilaginal phenylalanil cyril glutamil phenylalanil cyril. Cyril tryptophylysyl cyril 3-enol asparaginal glutamil 3-enol glutaminylusylysyl glycyl glutamilalanilisyl aspartyl therinylalanil asparaginal histidil glycyl glutamil valilysylaginalalanil valil. Utamil glutamilysylaginal asparaginal glycyl valil 3-enolisylaginal glycyl glutamil 3-enolusyl cyril tryptophylysyl cyrilaginalosylysyl valilysyl 3-enol glutamil valil cyril glutamil asparaginal glutamila. Lanil glutaminalisyl glutaminal glycilispartyl glutamilocylalinylisylucyl cyril phenylanilysyl valil 3 anilysyl glutamil vanil glutamilisyl methanoil oil ceroil asparagine oil panoil alan oil Lysilispartyl cysteanyl valil glutaminal terasilysyl glutamilysyl valilisyl asparaginal cyrilysyl glutamil glutamilosylizolosyl cyril glycyl cyrilysyl glutamil valil glutaminal alanil glutamilisyl Lucilispartyl 3-anyl glutamil asparaginal phenylalanil glutamilalanil glutaminal histidil glutaminal 3-anylysyl cyrilalanilisyl aspartilva. Lil glutaminal glutaminal glycyl prelil aspartilaginil glycyl histidil glutamil cyril 3-anylucyl Spartyl glycilysyl glutamilaginal cyrilaginal glutaminaginal glutaminal valil 3-anylysyl tretafil glutamilaginal phenylalanil glutamil 3-anyl asparaginalysyl glutami. L3-anyl valilaginal terasilysyl phenylalanil glutaminal 3-anyl glycyl cyril histidil glutamilaginal phenylalanilysyl phenylalanil cyrilysyl glutamil glutamini. L3-anylysyl glutamil phenylalanil cyrilysylaginal 3-anyl glutamil cyrilysylalanil valil glutamilalanil glutamilasparaginal valilisyl glutamilalanil cyrilglutamilysyl prelilysyl glycyl prolil glutaminal aspara. Ginalysyl glutaminal cyrilysyl glutaminal valilisyl glutamilispartyl 3-anylysyl glutamilispartylysyl 3-anyl methanoil glue. Tamil methanoil valoil oil trionoil triptorp oil aspartyl histidil panoil alanil glycyl cyrilasparaginal phenylalanil glutamil 3-anylysyl cyril valil tryptophylysyl 3-anyl glutamilysyl glutamilysyl asparaginal. Alanylysyl glutamil 3-anyl cyrilalanil methanoil aspartyl metionyl glutaminalysyl cyril valil 3-anylysyl glutamilysyl glutamil cyrilysyl vali. Glycilysyl glutamilalanil glutaminal cyril phenylalanil glutaminal valil 3-anyl glycyl glutamil cyrilalaniliginalisyl 3-anyl glutaminalysyl Inalterasyl glutamilosylaginil glutamil histidilalanil glutaminil cysteanylysyl glutamil glycyl 3-anylysyl histidilysyl cyril glutaminalysyl phenylalanil glutamil glutamila. Sparaginalosylaginilisyl glutaminal cyril glutamil phenylalanil glutamilaspartylysylalanil valil prelilysyl cysteanyl cyrilalanil 3-anyl glutamil 3-anyl terasilyzy. Valilysyl glutamil histidil methanoil aspartyl oil oisteinoil glutaminalalanilisyl glutamil cyrilalanilisyl 3-anylyl phenylalanil cyrilalaniliginalisyl valil asparaginilla. Genilispartyl cyril cysteanyl valil glutamilalanilisyl glutaminal terasilyl glutamilaspartylysylaginiliginalalanilisyl glutaminal 3-anylyl glutami. Lasparaginalisyl histidil tryptophyl glutaminalaginalisyl glutamilysyl cyril phenylalanilisyl 3-anyl tryptophylysyl glutamilaginal glutamilalanilisyl cyril prolil glutami. Methanoil aspartylysyl oil ceroil alanoil aspartyl arganoil valoil glutamyl glycyl glutaminalysyl glutaminalalanilisyl glutamil valil cyril glutaminalanil cyril phenylalani. Terasyl cyrilysyl glutaminal phenylalanil cyril valilalanil aspartyl valilisyl methanoil methionalisyl histidilysyl glutaminalysyl aspartyl glutamilla. Ginil tryptophylaginal aspartylysyl prolil glutaminalysyl asparaginal phenylalanilisyl glutaminil cyril valil glutamil histidil glutaminal phenylalanil aspartyl. Glutamilysyl cyril phenylalanil cyril valil tryptophylysyl phenylalanilisyl cyril glutaminal 3-anyl cyril glutamilysyl cyrilysyl methanoil aspartyl histidil glutaminoil val. Ilanilisyl 3-anylyginal histidilysyl aspartyl histidilalanil glutamil valil glutamil cyrilysyl glutaminal cyrilysyl glutaminal glycyl histidilysyl glycyl cyrilysyl glycyla. Ginalanil glutamilispartylosyl histidylosylusyl glutaminil glycylazelilanil glutamilispartyl cystenyl phenylalanil glutaminolusyl phenylalanil glutamil glutamilalanil cyril glutaminil valil glutamilaginil gluta. Minilosylanilosyl cyril histidylosylalanil glutamil phenylalanilosyl glutaminil cyril histidylalanil cyrilosyl cyril glycylosolosylosyl arginil glutaminilosylginil glutaminil 3-enil valil glutamilalanil 3-enil aspa. Raginil cyril methanoil asparaginoil oil oil asparaginoil glutamoil sir oil aspartoil oilisylosyl glutamilysyl aspartilosyl asparaginil aspartilalanilosyl glutaminil asparaginil alanilisyl glutamil cyrilalanil valilsa. Ilosylispartyl glycylosylosylosylsyl cyrilysylalanil glutaminil terasyl histidylosylisylosylosylsyl glycyl cyril glutamil glutaminiliginil thronil cyril cystenilaginil alanil 3-enil alanil aspartyl glutaminalosyl cystine. Ilglycyl glutamil valil glutamilaginil glutaminil asparaginil glycyl 3-enilisyl glutaminil cyril glutamilalanil aspartilalanil alanil valilosylsylisyl alanil phenylalanil glutaminil aspartyl glutaminil. Lysyl glutamil glutamilosylosylysyl cyrilysylosyl glutamilaspartylisolyusyl glutamil glutamilaginil 3-enil aspartylysyl glutamilaginilosylazil glutamil pralil 3-enil aginil glutaminil glutaminil glutaminilla. Raginilosylaginil valil phenylalanil asparaginil glutaminalosyl glutamilaspartyl glutamilosylasparaginil cyril histidil glutamilosyl cystenil tryptophylosylisyl aspartylysyl glutaminilosylosy. Lalanil glutaminilosylspartyl valilalanil phenylalanil pralil glutamil valilaspartyl arginil glutamilosylosyl asparaginil arginilosyl glutamil valil 3-enil tryptophyllospartyl aspartyl 3-enilisyl arginilosylosyl his. Tidil glutamilasparaginil glutaminil glycyl glutaminil cystenil glycylosylosylospartylosyl methanoil arginoil glutamoil tyrosyl glutaminoil asparaginilosylysyl cyrilalanil valil cyrilosyl valilusyl glutamilasparagi. Nilalanil cyril valilosylosyl valil 3-eniliginil 3-enilisyl usylosylaspartyl glutaminil glutamilaspartylosylysyl tryptophyllalanil phenylalanil cyrilosyl histidil glutamil 3-enilisyl asparaginilisylm. Final asparaginil terasylisyl glutaminalosyl aspartylosyl asparaginil phenylalanil 3-enil cyrilosyl glycylysyl histidylosylosyl cyril glutamilosylosyl histidil cyrilaspartyl phenylalanil cyri. Lucyl valilysyl 3-enil aspartyl methanoil glutamoil sir oil treonoil valoil aspartylysyl tryptophylosyl aspartyl valil cyril glutamilosylosyl glutamil asparaginil methanoil aspartoil arginoil valoil sir oil. Isolysyl tryptophyllospartyl aspartyl valilosyl cyril 3-enil arginilaspartyl glutamilosylosyl glycyl tryptophyll cyril asparaginil cystenil valil pralil glutaminil methanoil alanoil glutamoil asparaginoil isolyl cyri. Lasparaginillosyl aspartyl histidylosyl arginilalanil glutamilosylosyl glutamil phenylalanil glutamil cyril glutamil valilisyl asparaginilosyl alanilosyl arginilosyl glutamil glutamilosyl histidil. Cyrilosyl valilasparaginil aspartylosylysyl glutamilosyl 3-enilisyl asparaginilosyl glutamil 3-enil pralilaspartylosyl glutaminil phenylalanilisyl glutamilalanil aspartylosyl methanoil glutaminoil oisoilosy. Glutamil histidylalanilisyl glutamilosylosyl 3-enil glutamil valilalanilisyl glycyl 3-enilisyl aspartyl phenylalanil 3-anilalanil glutaminil cyril 3-enil glutaminil valil glutamilysyl phenylalanilisyl asparaginil. Aspartylysylosyl 3-enil tryptophyll phenylalanil 3-enilisyl valil glutamil cyrilosyl methanoil asparaginoil oisterinoil alanoil glutaminol asparaginil glutamil 3-enil cystenil glutamilalanilisyl valilese. Ilaspartylysylosyl glutamilosyl cyril glutaminil cyril asparaginilosyl cyril 3-enil glutamilasparaginil cyrilosyl cystenil arginilosyl terasyl histidil. Serilalanil glutamilosyl cyrilosyl glycylaginil methanoil 3-enil glycylosyl histidil glutamilalanil valil cyril glutaminalosyl cystenil cyrilosyl 3-enil glutaminalanil cyrilosyl glutam. Inil glutamil cyrilosyl histidil phenylalanil cyril glutamil cyril methanoil glutamoil panoil alanoil glutamoil tryptopoil panoil alanilosyl glycylalanilisyl glutamil cyril cerilus. Partyloginyl 3-anyl glycyl aspartyl cyrillycyl valylycyl glutaminyl esylycyl histidyl aspartylycyl glutaminyl asparaginylycyl salucyl cyrilyl valyl cyrilyl aspartyl glycyl glutaminyl cyrilycyl aspartyl il 3-anyl glutaminyl glycyl glutaminyl 3-anylucyl terasilyl histidylycyl cyrilycyl glutaminylycyl valyl cyrilycyl glutaminylycyl 3-anylycyl asparaginyl glutam il-phenylyl phenylyl salicyl glutaminyl cystinyl aspartylycyl glutaminyl aspartyl cystinyl cyrilyl glycyl cyrilyl phenylyl glutamyl aspartyl glutaminyl histidyl asparaginyl tryptophylyl histidyl glutamyl methanoyl glutamoyl arginoyl penoyl alanoyl asparaginoyl treonoyl glutamyl asparaginyl glycyl glutamyl cyrilycyl glutaminyl histidyl per allyl glutamilycyl asparaginyl glutamyl valyl histidylycyl valyl glutamyl methanyl phenylyl glycyl glutamilyl alanyl arginyl glutamyl cyrilycyl aspartylycyl cyrilyl glutaminyl arginyl glycyl glutamini Lucilycyl cyrilyl glycyl histidyl glycyl glutaminyl cystinyl cyrilyl glutaminyl threonyl ceryl histidyl glutaminyl asparaginyl arginyl methanoyl treonoyl glutamilyl cyrilyl cystinyl glutaminyl valyl glutamyl histidyl glutamyl cyrilyl methanoyl tryptopoyl penoyl alanoyl tryptopoyl valyl alanoyl Lucyl glutaminyl aspartyl arginyl cystinyl glutamyl cyrilyl 3-anylycyl glycyl cyrilycyl aspartyl 3-anylycyl glutamylycyl arginyl cyrilyl glutaminyl aspartylycyl methan glycyl glutamyl valylycyl asparaginyl methanoyl alanylycyl glutaminyl alanylycyl cyrilyl zeryl asparaginyl glutaminyl arginyl valylycyl glutamin il 3-anyl glutaminyl 3-anylycyl glutaminyl valyl tryptophenyl aspartylycyl methanoyl ceroyl valyl histidyl alanoyl glutaminyl cyrilyl 3-anylycyl glutaminyl cyrilyl glutaminyl trypto Philosparaginyl aspartyl teracyl valyl glutamyl arginyl asparaginyl glutaminyl tryptophyl methanoyl glutamoyl ceroyl valyl aspartyl glutaminyl glutamyl histidyl prelylycyl glutaminyl glutam. Inyl prelyl glycyl glutamylycyl phenylyl valylycyl aspartyl histidylycyl glutaminyl cyrilyl glutamyl glutamyl aspartyl histidyl 3-anyl arginyl histidyl arginyl Ilanylycyl cyrilyl glutamilycyl teracyl glutamilycyl 3-anyl aspartyl glutamyl cyrilyl phenylyl aspartyl 3-anyl glutamylycyl 3-anyl phenylyl asparaginyl aspart Ilycyl methanoyl treonoyl valyl alanoyl glutamoyl metionoyl arginoyl valyl glutamilycyl valylycyl aspartyl histidylycyl methionyl teracyl aspartyl valyl histidyl glutamyl phenyl 3-anylus. Partyl tryptophylycyl histidyl cyrilyl glutamylycyl histidyloginyl tryptophyl cyrilyl aspartyl methanoyl ceroyl goynoyl aspartyl ceroyl alanyl 3-anyl cyrilyl glutamilyl Silicyl aspartyl cyrilyl arginyl glycyl alanyl cyrilyl arginyl cyrilyl valyl cyrilyl alanyl prolyl valylycyl asparaginyl 3-anyl alanyl cyrilyl cystinyl Silmethanoyl histidyl treonoyl glutamoyl metionoyl glutaminoyl alanoyl arginoyl alanyl aspartyl tryptophylycyl glutamyl aspartyl cyrilyl valyl phenylyl 3-anyl cyrilyl glutamylus. Periginylycyl valyl cyrilyl methanoyl alanoyl ceroyl glutaminyl phenylyl glycyl glutaminyl phenylyl Usilyl 3-anyl tryptophylyl glutaminyl threonylusilyl glycylyl asparaginyl 3-anyl aspartyl valyl glutamyl cystinyl tryptophyl histidylycyl glutaminyl Lutamylycyl aspartylyl glutamyl perylyloginyl 3-anyl aspartylyl cyrilyl asparaginyl cystinyl phenylyl aspartylyl Cyril 3-enyl terasyl Cyril glycolysyl valyl Cyril glycolysyl glutamyl terasyl asparaginal cystinylysyl cystinylusyl glutaminyl alanyl sralisyl glycyl cystinyl glutaminyl asparaginalisyl glutamyl glutaminylsyl Silicyl glutaminyl phenylalanil arginilysyl phenylalanil aspartyl phenylalanil glutaminyl tryptophylosyl valyl asparaginal alanylysyl 3-enyl alanylysyl cystinyl phenyl alanyl aspartylysyl prolyl glutaminyl asparaginalisyl Cyril glutamyl valyl Cyril 3-enyl cyrilysyl glutaminylysyl glutamyl phenylalanil Cyril glutamyl asparaginal glycyl glutaminyl histi dilysyl asparaginal methanoyl metionoil oil sir oil oil glutam oil lucylysyl Cyril 3-enyl 3-enyl glutamilysyl alanylysyl glycylysyl glutaminyl alanylysyl valyl 3-enyl alanylysyl glutam Ilaspartyl tryptophylosyl asparaginal phenylalanil histidyl Cyril asparaginal usyl histidyl glutaminylysyl glutamyl Cyril alanylysyl glutamyl asparaginal usylysyl glutaminyl methanoyl oil aspartoyl penoyl alanoyl glutam oil var. Lil cyrilylanil glutamyl prolylysyl glutaminyl aspartyl tryptophylosyl srilysyl 3-enyl glutamilysyl methanoyl valoyl histidoyl glutam oil sir oil asparaginal terasyl aspartylysyl prenylalanilisyl arginal glutaminyl Cyril valalysyl glutamylysyl histidyl cystinyl terasyl glutaminyl prolyl glutaminylysyl asparaginal glutamilysyl alanyl glutaminylysilta iptaphyl glutaminyl Cyril phenylalanil histidyl valyl Cyril glutaminylysyl Cyril glutaminyl terasyl alanylysyl Cyril asparaginal 3-enyl glutamilysyl valyls Rhylogynylysyl aspartylargynylysyl valylanil glutamyl histidyl asparaginal glutaminyl phenylalanil cyrilysyl glycylysyl glutaminyl aspartyl tryptophyl methanoyl dronoyl aspartoyl alanoyl esyl oil histid. Methanoyl oil aspartoyl sir oil tyros oil oyster enoyl histid oil proloyl dronoyl sir oil aspartylysyl Cyril valylysyl aspartyl cyrilarginal 3-anylysyl glutamyl alanylysyl Cyril valalysyl glutaminyl glutamyl. Isolysyl glutaminyl methanoyl oisoyl metionoyl esyl oil valoyl dronoyl arginoyl glycyl glutamyl Cyril valalysyl glutaminyl asparaginal 3-enyl Cyril prolyl glutamyl glycylysyl prolyl 3-enyl glutaminyl Usyl glutaminyl Cyril valalysyl aspartyl methanoyl tryptopoyl alanoyl sir oil lucyl Cyril alanyl glycylysyl cystinylysyl Cyril glutaminylysyl glycyl alanylysyl cyrilysyl tryptophyl 3-anyl Cyril terasyl glutam. Inyl aspartyl glycyl valylarginal glutaminyl phenylalanil Cyril glycyl tryptophyl methanoyl aspartoyl sir oil metionoyl glutamoyl alanoyl asparaginoyl glutamyl Cyril glutaminyl histidyl alanyl glutamilysyl arginal. Aspartylysyl 3-enyl methanoyl oil gloinoyl oisoyl alanoyl oisoyl usyl asparaginal glutaminyl valylysyl Cyril terasyl cyrilysyl glutamyl 3-enyl glutaminyl valylysyl glycyl alanyl glycyl methionine. 3-enyl glutamyl histidyl terasyl valyl 3-enyl glutaminyl aspartylysyl glutaminyl arginal terasyl arginal alanylysyl glutaminyl alanylyl valyl 3-enyles. Cyril glutamilysyl valylaginal histidyl glutaminyl terasyl glutaminyl aspartylysyl alanyl phenylalanil glutamyl valyl tryptophylosyl glycyl glutaminyl aspart. Glutaminyl terasyl Cyril valylysyl glycyl aspartylylanil histidyl 3-enyl histidyl glutaminyl 3-enyl aspartylysyl glutaminyl valyl histidyl cystinyl alanyl glycyl gluta. Minylalanil asparaginal Cyril valylysyl histidyl 3-enyl glutaminyl aspartyl valylysyl prenyl Cyril glycylysyl prolyl glutaminyl aspartyl arginal alanylysyl cyrilysyl arginal glutami. Nyl aspartyl tryptophyl glutaminyl terasyl glutaminyl histidyl arginal Cyril glutamyl 3-enyl phenylalanil asparaginal valyl asparaginalisyl arginalisyl methanoyl glutamoyl. Utaminylysyl phenylalanil glutaminyl valyl aspartyl glutamyl tryptophylosyl 3-enyl glutamilysyl valyl Cyril prolyl arginal 3-enyl glutaminyl Cyril asparaginal arginal alanyl 3-enylysyl. Glutamylysilyl glutaminylsyl histidyl glutaminyl methanoyl oil tretafil histidyl glutamyl valyl 3-anyl pterosylogenyl aspartyl glutamyl valyl valyl glycerol anilogenyl alanyl glutaminyl gluta. Mylysilyl aspartyl glutamyl ceryl histidyl valyl asparaginal cerylagenil methanoyl oil oystein oil glutamine oil alanoyl treon oil glutamine oil trenyl cerylagenil pterosyl glutaminyl alanylysilyl glutaminyl valyluke. Glutaminylsilyl phenylalanilsyl glutamyl glutaminyl ceryl pterosyl ceryl aspartyl tryptophyl pterosyl glycyl ceryl 3-anyl he. Stidyllysyl asparaginal phenylalanilsyl asparaginal valyl 3-anyl aspartylysyl valyl aspartyl 3-anyl valyl methanoyl metion oil oil lysylysyl 3-anyl glutamyl valylusilyl aspartyl. Methanoyl glutamoyl oil histid oil oil ser oil alanoyl arginyl glutamylysyl glutamylagenyl valylysyl pterosylysyl glutamyl glycyl glutamylalanil glutamylagenylysyl arginylysyl glutamylizo. Lucyl histidyl aspartyl histidyl methanoyl glutaminol oil glutamylysyl 3-anyl ceryl 3-anyl valylagenylysyl glutamyl histidyl methanoyl 3-anylysyl glutamylysyl glycylysyl histidylysyl alanylysyl glutamilf. Inylalanil ceryl aspartylysyl cystinylysyl alanylysyl 3-anyl glutaminyl tryptophylysyl alanil glutamyl pterosyl glutaminyl glutamylysyl istidyl valyl glutamyl prelylysyl methanoyl glutamoyl oil tyros. Glutamylysyl alanil glutaminylysyl cerylysyl pterosylysyl cerylucyl glutaminyl 3-anyl valylysyl ceryl histidyl glutamyl prelylysyl valylagenyl glutamylysyl glycyl glutamyl alanylysyl. Lutamylysyl valyl glutaminyl aspartyl valyl 3-anyl aspartyl glutaminyl ceryl aspartyl pterosyl glutaminyl aspartylysyl cystinyl cerylysyl glutamyl histidyl valylphen. Ilylanil cerylysyl glutaminyl valylysyl aspartyl histidyl glutamyl aspartyl pterosyl asparaginal ceryl glutaminyl valyl glutamylysyl tryptophylysyl glutaminyl methanoyl ser oil arginoyl oil. Alylalanil prelylaspartylysyl glutamyl 3-anyl cerylysyl glutamyl 3-anyl glutaminyl alanil histidylysyl alanil methanoyl metion oil glutamoyl oil alanoyl oil turn. Ilylanil glutamyl aspartylagenylysyl asparaginal glutaminyl methanoyl oil aspartyl treon oil glutamine oil oystenyl alanil aspartyl histidylysyl glutaminyl alanylysyl glutamin. Ilasparaginal valyl histidyl alanil histidylysyl glutaminyl glycyl 3-anyl aspartyl ceryl pterosyl alanylysyl cystinyl ceryl 3-anyl alanil glutaminylagenyl methanoyl tyros oil glutamine oil ser oil glutamoyl histid oil glutam. Ilysyl glutaminylysyl histidyl valyl cerylagenyl glutaminyl aspartyl threnylysyl glutaminyl cystinyl glutaminyl alanil tryptophylysyl ceryl alanil valyl glutaminyl prelylaspartylysyl glutamyl prelyl glutami. Nil prelylysyl cerylagenyl alanil glutaminyl glutaminyl valylysyl histidyl phenylalanil glutaminyl alanilagenyl 3-anyl pterosylysyl aspartylysyl cystinyls. Ryl methanoyl oystein oil aspartyl oil ser oil asparaginoyl alanoyl ser oil oil 3-anyl alanylysyl aspartylysyl glutaminyl 3-anyl glutaminyl 3-anyl valyl glutam. Inylalanil glutaminyl asparaginal 3-anyl glutaminyl glycyl tryptophyl glutaminyl histidylysyl ceryl glutamylysyl tryptophylysyl pterosyl glutaminyl aspartyl alanil aspartyl glutaminyl glutam. Inylysyl glutaminyl asparaginal methanoyl arginoyl histid oil ser oil glutamilysyl asparaginal alanil glutaminyl asparaginal methanoyl oil ser oil glutamine oil aspartyl penoyl alanoyl oiles. Ilysyl glutaminyl alanil ceryl valyl asparaginal 3-anyl glutamilysyl valyl asparaginal 3-anyl glutamyl ceryl glutamyl histidylysyl glutamylysyl agenil histidylysyl asparaginal aspartyl glutaminyl tryptophylysyl aspartyl cystinyl glutaminyl ceryl asparaginal cystinyl glutaminyl aspartylysyl glutaminyl agenilf. Rhenolaginol aspartyl teracyl histidyl aspartyl cystinyl methanoyl asparaginoyl valylvinyl glutamyl valyl phenylalanillyl glutamilyl phenylalanil threonyl 3-anyl glutamyl tryptophyl aspartyl asparaginylyl alanylaginal cerylasp. Artylylanil glutamyl ceryl 3-anylalanil valyl histidylyl glutamylalanil usilyl glutaminal glutamylaginylyl teracyl glutamyl aspartylyl aspartyl glutaminalisyl. Glutaminalisyl methanoylisyl oil glutamoyl histidyl oil asparaginoyl oil aspartylyl glutamilyl valylyl glutamyl glutaminal 3-anyl ceryl histidylyl glutaminalaginal tryptophyl phenylalanil glutaminal. Lucyl glutamyl aspartylyl glutaminal valyl 3-anyl asparaginyl glutamyl glutamilyl asparaginyl valyl glutaminal cerylaginal phenylalanil glutaminal methy. Anyl glutamyl tryptophylanil glutaminal prolyl asparaginyl glutaminal ceryl prolyl aspartyl methanoyl alanoyl glutaminoyl asparaginoyl oil metionoyl. Aspartyl histidylyl cystinyl ceryl glutamilyl glutaminal methanoyl oil ceroyl oil aspartyl aspartylaginal valyl methanoyl alanoyl aspartoyl oil gloyolosy. Lasparaginal glutaminal valylyl glutaminal ceryl aspartylyl glutaminal ceryl histidyl valyl asparaginal cystinyl ceryl aspartylyl valyl glutaminalaginal teracyl. Usyl asparaginyl ceryl glutamilyl 3-anyl glutaminil phenylalanil methanoyl valyl penoyl glutaminoyl alanoyl treonoyl ceryl glutaminal histidyl glutamilaginal. Usyl methanoyl penoyl alanoyl arginoyl glutamoyl histidyl oil oil usyl prolyl aspartyl valyl ceryl glutaminal valylyl 3-anyl cystinyl cerylalanil glutaminalanil cerylyl 3-anyl teracyl glut. Aminyl asparaginal glutamyl valyl 3-anyl glycylyl tryptophylanil glutaminal glycylaginal glutamilyl methanoyl oil glutamoyl valoyl treonoyl glutamoyl glutamilyl ceryl glutamyl valylyl glycylyl glutamini. Glutamilyl ceryl valyl teracyl aspartyl ceryl valylyl glutaminalisyl cystinyl ceryl histidylaginylyl glutamilyl asparaginylyl valyl cerylaginylyl histidyl phenylalanilisyl. Utamyl aspartyl phenylalanil aspartylyl cystinyl histidyl tryptophylusilyl glutaminalanil aspartylyl valyl 3-anyl phenylalanil prolyl glutamilyl asparaginylyl methanoyl asparaginoyl glutamoyl ceroyl. Glutamilyl histidyl 3-anyl glutaminalisyl teracyl glutaminil asparaginylyl glutaminal ceryl prolyl glutamyl teracyl glutamyl asparaginylyl 3-anyl glutaminalaginal throny. Glycyl glutaminal 3-anyl prolyl ceryl asparaginyl glutamal valyl aspartyl histidyl ceryl teracyl glutamilyl asparaginyl prolylaginal glutaminal phenylalanil asparaginyl valylyl. Silvalylalanil aspartylyl phenylalanil teracyl valyl glutamilalanil glutamyl teracyl cerylyl glutamilyl 3-anyl glutaminal cerylu. Ceryl glutamilalanil phenylalanil arginil thionyl cerylyl valyl prolyl 3-anyl aspartylyl alanil valyl glutamilalanil cerylyl glutaminal aspartyl glycyl cystinyl arginil alanil. Isolyl aspartyl glutamyl valylalanil glycyl glutamilalanil valyl aspartyl glutamilyl asparaginyl glutaminalisyl glutamyl glycyl phenylalanil ceryl 3-anyl glycyl glutaminal prolyl tryptophyl glutamini. Prolyl aspartylyl methanoyl oil histidyl oil valoyl treonoyl oil tyrosyl histidylaginyl glutaminal 3-anyl glutaminalaginal valyl cerylyl glutamyl aspartyl 3-anyl cerylalanil. Osyl glutamyl histidyl glutamilyl methanoyl oil glutaminoyl glutamilaginal ceryl valylyl glutaminal cerylyl valyl asparaginyl glutamyl 3-anyl prolylalanil glutamilyl methanoyl tyrosyl histidyl cerylusylalanil glycyl glutaminal aspartyl ceryl glycylyl valyl lucylaginal valyl 3-anyl histidyl glutamyl aspartylu. Silalinil pralil histidilosilispatil pralilosilolanyl terrasil glutamilizililiniliginal histidil glutaminilisilosal glutaminil seril tryptophyl glutaminil glycol glutamilosilisilosil 3-anyl cerilalanilisilosal glic. Il glutamil 3-anyl valil 3-anyl glutamil cysteanyl glutamil seriloginil mathianyl valil glutaminil cerilisilosilospatil phenylalanil glutaminil 3-anyl glutamil methanoil seroil arginoil seroil oil aspat oil troiptop oil arginoil argi. Nil valilisilalinil glutamilosil seril glycil pralil valil terisilusilis patilusilis sporiginalosil glutaminil aspartilisilusil glutaminil glutamil glutamilisilusiliginalisulisil glutaminilisilusil histidil glutaminil. Glutamil valil glutaminil seril cerilosiliginalisulisil methanoil asparaginilanilusil seril histidilisil glutamilisal glutamilisal phenylalanil 3-anylisil glutamilosilisilusil cerilalanil aspartil. Usil glutamil histidil cerilosilalinil glutamilosil seril glutamilusil aspartil glycol aspartilisilusil glutaminil glutamilalanilusil arginil 3-anyl arginil glutaminalalanil 3-anylusil 3-anyl glutamilisolusil terrasil seri. Glutaminil cysteanyl glutaminiliginal terrasil glutaminil valil phenylalanil glutaminalalanil asparaginil aspartil tryptophylosil glutamil aspartilalanil glutamilusilusil glutaminilosilalanil glycol aspa. Reginil glycolusil aspartil valil glutamil cerilalinil glutamil asparaginilusilisal ceril histidil methanoil glutamoil panoil alanoil ceril 3-anyl glutamil aspartil glutaminil phenylalanil histidil ceril asparaginil. Usil glutamilosil histidil cerilosil valalanil 3-anylusil aspartil pralilosilisilusilisal pralil 3-anyl glycilisal glutamil aspartil lusil glutaminilisil valalanil cerilusil glutamilusil arginils. Aryl glutaminiliginal methanoil seroil arginoil aspartoil seroil gloinoil alanoil glutaminil valilaspartilusilusal glutaminil arginil cysteanyl 3-anylalanil glutaminil tryptophyl histidil aspartil terrasil glutaminilisil alanil arginil glutam. Il glutamil valilisilusil glutamilosil methanoil asparaginoil aspartoil trianyl glutamilisilisil ceril glutamil phenylalanil cerilusilusilisil 3-anyl ceril histidil glutamilalanil glutamil glutamilisilisil. Ryl glutamil histidilisilalanilusil valil ceril valil valil asparaginil ceril pinilalanil histidil glutamilisilisil valilanilusil glutamil glutamilisilalanil ceril glutaminilisil glutamilisil 3-anyl glycol asparaginilis. Partilalanil cerilisilalanil 3-anylusil cerilaginil ceril methanoil troonyl 3-anyl valil tryptophyl glutaminiliginal tryptophyl 3-anyl arginilusil arginilalanil valalanil glutaminalispartil glutaminil glutamilisilisaluc. Ilusil glutamilispartilalanil valalaspartil glutamil tryptophyl 3-anyl glycol phenylalanil asparaginilisal valilisilisal alanil 3-anyl glutamil methanoil esol oil aspartoil glutaminoil oil glutaminoil aspartoil oisoil Sulpralil glycol cerilalanil glutamilisilalanil cerilisilalanil glutamilusilusil 3-anylusilusal glutamil terrasil histidil aspartil 3-anyl pinilalanil valilusil glutaminil glutamini. Cerilalanilusil glycol methanoil oil aginoil glutaminoil trianylusil ceril methanoil oil glutaminoil aspartoil gloinoil alanoil proloil treonyl pralil glycol glutamil pralilusil methanoil glutaminoil glut. Amilisilusil 3-anylalanil methanoil glutaminoil aspartoil arginoil oisterinoil osilisparaginil methanoil glutamoil oisoil valoil oisoil treonoil asparaginil glycilisilusil valilisil glutamilisilisil aspartil arginil. Glutamil methanoil valoil glutamoil treonoil glutaminoil isol oil asparaginoil seroil valilisil cysteanyl tryptophyl valil glutaminil 3-anylisal glutamil terasilusil glycil asparaginil pralil 3-anylisalusil glutamilisilusil asp. Artilalanil glutaminilisil glutaminilisilusil 3-anyl glutamilalanil 3-anyl asparaginil histidil arginil glutaminil asparaginilisalusil glutamilisil methanoil alanoil glutamoil glutaminoi. Lisil glutamilisil terasilusil glycilusil terasil 3-anylisil pralil ceril glutamilusil cerilusil glutaminilisil alanil glutamil valalalanilisil aspartilusil arginil aspartil glutaminilisil. Glutaminil aspartilisilisil glutamil valil glutaminil ceril 3-anyl ceril glutamilusil ceril arginil glutaminilisil glutaminilisil aspartilusil 3-anyl 3-anylisol. Usilosyl 3-anilysilyl 3-anilyspartyl asparaginil valil glutaminil 3-anilyspartyl glutaminilisyl valilysyl glysyl glutamil glutamilysylispartyl glysyl cystenyl asparaginil cyrilysyl. Usyl methanoyl glutamoyl oil aspartyl alanoyl valoyl glutaminoyl oisoyl panoyl ilanilysyl glutamil glutaminil asparaginil glycyl glutaminilisyl glycylisyl prelilysyl alanilysylisylisyl glycylisylysyl 3-anyl glutamil. Usyl histidyl glutaminil 3-anylysylisylaginil glutaminil alanil glutamil asparaginil arginilysyl cyrilysylysyl asparaginil glutaminil alanilyl cyryl histidylysyl glutamil glutamil pterosyl asparaginil glutamil methy. Anilysyl glutamilysylisylisylisyl tryptophylisylisyl glutamilysyl alanilysyl valilysyl alanil histidyl glycyl 3-anylysylisyl alanil tryptophyl asparaginil cyryl glutaminelysyl arginil glutamil glutaminil. Pterosylisylisylisyl histidyl glutaminil 3-anylysylisyl glutamil glutamyl cyrilysyl glutamilysylisyl aspartyl cyryl glutamilysyl glutamil alanil thionyl 3-anyl glutamilysylisyl glutaminil pterosylisyl 3-anyl cyrylvyl. Pterosyl cystenyl 3-anyl glutamilysyl methanoyl ceroyl glutaminoyl valilanyl glutamilysyl glycylaginil glutamil 3-anyl glutamilysylaginil glutaminil methanoyl isoyl oil arginoyl oil glutamine. Ilasparaginilisyl glutaminil aspartylyl aspartyl methanoyl isolysyl phenylyl glutamilyl glutamilysylisylisyl glutaminil glutaminil alanil 3-anylysyl. 3-anyl cyryl prylyl glutamil valil glycylaginilisyl cyrilysylisyl glutamil glutaminilisyl cyryl histidylaginil glutaminil histidylysylisyl cyryl glutamil methanoyl glutamoyl ceroyl oisoyl proloyl valoyl glutaminoyl alanoyl. Valil glutaminilisyl cystenyl glutaminil cyrilyl arginilysyl prylyl glutamil aspartyl valilanyl cyrilysyl prelilysyl cystenyl histidylalanil glutaminil glutamil cyryl. Arginilysyl glutaminil histidyl 3-anylyl glutaminil cystenyl asparaginilisyl methanoyl glutaminol alanoyl valoyl glutaminil pterosyl glutamil methan. Ilysyl histidylysyl glutaminil glutamil glycylalanil histidylaginil glutamilysylisyl glutamil aspartylysyl prolyl alanil 3-anyl cyryl asparaginilisyl glutamilysyl alanil. Glutaminilisylisyl cyrilaginil histidyl glutamilysylalanil glutaminilisylisyl glycylpterosyl glutaminil alanil cyrilysyl asparaginil cystenylysyl methanoyl oil trian. Ilmethanoyl oisoyl alanoyl histidyl alanoyl treonoyl metionoyl oil trianyl valil 3-anyl glutamil glycylysyl alanil glycyl 3-anyl glutamil aspartyl glycyl prylyl 3. Nil prylyl cyrilalanil histidyl prylyl cyryl valil methanoyl metionoyl trianyl glycylaginil cystenyl histidyl 3-anylysyl cyryl prylyl valil 3-anyl glutamil cyryl glycyl 3-anyl asparag. Inyl cyryl glutamilysylisyl cyryl prylyl alanil cystenyl arginil cyryl prylyl valilanyl asparaginil 3-anyl aspartyl alanil cyryl valil asparaginil glutaminil aspartylysylisyl alanil pterosyl glutaminil Lucyl cyrilyl glutamiliginilysyl glutaminil 3-anyl aspartyl alanil histidyl prylyl cyryl 3-anyl cyryl alanil cyryl glutaminil glutamil phenylalanil pterosyl glutamil prylyl glycylysyl glutamil prylyl cyrylala. Nil 3-anyl glycylispartylysyl glutaminil arginil ceryl tretophyl glutamil 3-anylysyl asparaginil valilysyl cyryl glutaminil 3-anylysyl pterosyl glutamil alanylysyl glutamilag. Inyl glutaminil pterosyl glutaminil aspartyl cyrilysyl glutaminil cyrilysyl 3-anylysyl methanoyl glutamoyl alanoyl oil glutamoyl cyryl glutamil prylyl glycyl arginil cyri. Prolyl glutaminil methanoyl alanoyl glutamoyl histidyl glutaminoyl alanylysyl methanoyl aspartyl glutamoyl oil metionoyl oil glutaminil aspartyl glutamilysyl asparaginil glutaminil cyrilyl. Usilalanil glutamilysyl valil cystenyl glutamilalanil aspartyl prelilalanil glutaminilisyl alanylysyl glutaminil zeryl 3-anylysyl 3-anyl valilysyl alanil glutamilaginil methanoyl ceroylt. Trianylysilocyllogenol methanoyl ois oil alan oil ser oil gloin oil ois oil argine oil glutamine glutamyl glutaminylacylosylsporiginal aspartyl glutaminyl usyl glutamyl glutaminylgenol glutaminal alanil. Usyl glutaminylgenol terasyl arginyl cystenyl glutaminylanil aspartyl glutamilylusyl aspartyl cyryl tryptophylosyl cyryl 3-anylysyl alanil threnylusyl aspartyl 3-anylyl cyryl prolylysyl glutamyl prolylm. Thionyl aspartyl methanoyl glutamoyl alanoyl glutamine oil metion oil aspartyl cystenyl glutaminyl asparaginal methanoyl oil valoyl glutamoyl isol oil glutamoyl glutaminylysyl valyl cyryl glutamilyl valyl histidine. L'asparaginal glutamyl asparaginal glutamyl glycylysyl histidyl 3-anylysyl aspartyl glutamilyl glutaminylysyl glycylysyl glycyl glutami. Lucyl glutaminylgenol histidyl aspartylysyl glutaminylusyl asparaginal methanoyl glutamine oil oil treon oil alan oil glutamine oil glutamoyl oil glutamyl cyryl aspartyl valyl aspartylysyl 3-anyl alanil 3-anyl glu. Terminal cyryl prolyl glycyl valyl glutaminyl tryptophylosyl glutaminyl alanil 3-anyl tryptophyl 3-anyl glutaminyl arginyl glutaminyl cyrylysyl glutaminylyl gluta. Mylosyl glutaminyl glutaminylyl cyryl valyl arginyl glycyl glutaminyl histidyl cyryl glutamyl 3-anyl. Cyryl glycyl aspartyl glutamylysyl prolyl aspartyl valylysyl cyryl glycyl methanoyl glutamoyl oil glutamoyl oil ser oil zeryl glutamyl aspartyl methanoyl arginoyl metion oil oil tryptop. Hil glutamyl cyrylysyl histidyl glutaminyl phenylalanil cyryl 3-anylysyl glutaminyl asparaginal valylysyl glutaminyl valylysyl terasyl cyrylogen. Il prolyl asparaginal arginylysyl cyryl glycyl valyl prolylysyl terasyl glycyl aspartyl valyl prolyl 3-anyl glutaminyl aspartylysyl cyryl alanil valyl 3-anyl cyrylysyl aspartyl glycylysyl asparaginal glutaminyl Nilphenylalanil glutaminyl valyl cyryl glutaminyl glycyl alanylysyl glutaminyl cyrylysyl histidylysyl glutaminylysyl terasyl aspartyl glycyl valyl cyryl alanil 3-anyl cyryl 3-anyl tri. Tophylosyl aspartyl valyl glutaminyl arginylysyl phenylalanil valyl 3-anyl alanylysyl prolyl glutamyl 3-anyl cystenylysyl phenylalanil asparaginal glutaminyl Usylysyl aspartylysyl glutamyl methanoyl ser oil glutamoyl methanoyl aspartyl oil asparaginoyl oil penoyl alanil cyryl glutaminyl phenylalanil prolyl glutamyl asparaginal glycyl asparty. L'asparaginal aspartyl valylysyl glutamyl aspartyl 3-anylysyl glycyl cystenylysyl cyrylysyl aspartyl cyryl valyl asparaginal glutaminyl arginyl cystenyl histidyl glutaminyl methane. Ilysyl glutaminyl asparaginyl phenylalanil glutaminyl asparaginal aspartylysyl valylysyl phenylalanil 3-anyl cyrylysyl aspartyl asparaginylysyl terasyl. Usylysyl glutaminyl asparaginal valyl phenylalanil glutaminyl prolyl valylalanil glutaminylysyl glutaminyl aspartyl glycylysyl glutamilf. Inylalanil aspartyl glycylysyl glutamilyl arginyl glycyl aspartylysyl glutaminyl valyl glutaminyl prolyl zeryl methanoyl glutamine oil ser oil glutamine oil aspartyl mer. Thionyl terasyl aspartyl glutamilyl methanoyl metion oil glycyl cyrylogenol arginyl cyryl glycylysyl asparaginal glutaminyl asparaginal lucyl 3-anylysyl cyryl glutaminyl terasyl glutamyl arginyl alanylysi. Glutaminyl aspartylysyl glutamyl 3-anyl glycyl methanoyl alanoyl goinoyl aspartoyl glutaminoyl oisolysyl valyl cyrylysyl glutaminyl glutam. Inylysyl aspartylysyl histidylysyl glutaminyl terasyl phenylalanil glutaminyl glycylyl cyryl histidyl methanoyl oil treon oil glutamyl 3-anylysyl phenylalanil cyryl phenyl. Alanylyl valyl glutaminylyl glutamyl 3-anyl glutaminyl phenylalanil histidyl 3-anyl glutamylyl methanoyl alanoyl glutamine oil alanoyl seroyl alanoyl valylusilicylaganyl histidylicylagenyl glycyl vinyl glutamylyl glue. Tamilteracilicilyl glutamyl 3-anyl tryptophyl histidylusilispartyl glutaminyl glutamylyl cyrilagenyl glutaminylyl glutamyl cyrilysyl valyl. Glycylyl valyl glutamyl aspartylagenyl 3-anylyl tyrosyl glutaminyl histidylusilicylcyrilysyl glutamyl prolilysyl. Lucylterosyl glutaminyl valylysylispartyl glycylysylaganyl cyrilysyl glutamyl glycyl cystinyl trip. Tophylosyl cyrilysporogenyl 3-anyl asparaganylyl methanoyl seroyl glutamylyl histidylagenylyl glutamyl 3-anylyl histidyl tryptophyl 3-anyl terosyl glutamyl asp. Artylosylicylyl histidyl tryptophylosyl glutaminyl aspartylagenylyl glutamyl phenylalanil tryptophyl 3-anyl glutaminyl cyrilyl 3-anyl glutamyl methanoyl. Valylagenyl aspartyl histidylyl asparaganyl phenylalanil glutamyl cyrilyl valylaspartylalanil glutaminyl cyrilyl valylysyl 3-anyl glycyl asparaganyl glutaminyl. Usilyl valylaspartyl 3-anyl alanil 3-anyl cyrilagenyl aspartyl glutaminyl tryptophyl 3-anyl aspartylyl 3-anyl asparaganyl prolilyl. Anyl valyl glutaminyl histidyl glutaminyl methanyl aspartylyl cyrilagenyl histidyl alanylyl glutamyl valyl methanoyl seroyl tryptopolysyl oil metionoyl glutamoy. Lasparagenyl valylysyl glutaminyl aspartyl asparagenyl cyrilysyl histidyl glutamyl phenylalanil Nilisyl asparaganyl cystinylyl glutaminyl 3-anyl valylaspartyl phenylalanil valylasparaganyl glutaminyl glutaminyl aspartyl cyrilyzy. Lagenyl cyrilaspartylyl 3-anyl aspartyl phenylalanil glutaminyl methanoyl asparaginoyl oil seroyl tryptopoyl glutamine oil isolysyl glutaminyl valyl 3-anyl glutamilyl Glutaminyl glutamyl tryptophyl glutamyl asparaganyl valyl glutaminyl cystinyl usilyl 3-anyl tryptophyl phenylalanil glutamyl 3-anyl glutamyl. Lysylagenyl glutaminyl histidylagenyl aspartyl glutaminyl valyl asparaganyl cystinyl glutaminyl aspartylyl Silalanilisyl glutamilyl valyl glutaminyl asparaganyl glutaminyl asparaganyl aspartyl valyl methanoyl seroyl treo. Nilosylagenyl glutaminyl 3-anyl tryptophylanil asparaganyl aspartyl histidyl methanoyl valyl glutamine oil valylysyl aspartyl glutaminyl tryptophyl histidylysyl valylalanil phenylalanil aspartylysyl asparaganyl cyrilyl methanoyl glutamoyl alanoyl tyrosyl seroyl araganyl phenylalanil 3-anyl glycyl glutaminyl. Nilvalyl glutaminyl valylaspartyl asparaganyl glutaminyl aspartyl glutaminyl cyrilyl phenylalanil glycyl 3-anyl asparaganyl glutaminyl cystinyl histidyl prolil 3-anyl glutamyl 3-anyl asparaganyl 3-anyl usilyl asparaganyl methanoyl tryptopoyl asparaginoyl asp. Original glutaminyl glutaminyl tryptophyl glutaminyl aspartyl glutaminyl cystinyl Enil Cyril 3-enil Valil glutaminil 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 glutamil aspartyl arginil 3-enil asparaginil glutamilus salicylal alanil 3-enil asparaginil aspartylis lucilalanil aspartyl aspartyl glutamil valilalanil 3-en. Tryptophyllosilicyl glutaminil aspartyl cysteinil asparaginil aspartylucyl lucilicyl glycilycyl glycyl 3-enil valilicyl aspartyl serilycyl phenylalanil phenylalanil histidil glutamilycyl glycyl glutamil glutaminil luke. Ilicyl glutaminil glutaminil valil aspartylalanil cyrilalanil cyrilalanilicylycyl glutaminil cyril aspartyl glutaminylycyl serilucyl cyril glutaminil histidilycyl cysteinilanilycyl glutamil glutaminilanilycyl cyste. Nilicyl glutaminil glutaminil 3-enil cyrilycyl glutaminil glycyl valilucyl aspartyl pterosyl glutamil 3-enil phenylalanil cyrilycyl glutamilalanilycyl glutamilalanil tryptophyllosilicyl valil glutamilalanil utamil glutamilycyl glutaminil glycyl glutaminil aspartyl prylyl cyril histidil cyril aspartylycyl cyril 3-enilicylucyl glutaminil glutamilaginil methanoyl glutamoyl oil glutaminol metionoyl oil Lysyl phenylalanil cyril methanoyl alanoyl proloyl aspartoyl arginilycyl asparaginil glutamilycyl glycyl pterosyl arginilycyl prylylycyl asparaginil aspartylycyl glutamilycyl arginil methanoyl glutaminol. Asparaginil asparaginil arginil histidil tryptophyll cyrilycyl cyril glutaminil 3-enil glutamilaginil phenylalanil cyrilycyl glutaminil cyril phenylalanil glutaminil histidil glutaminil. 3-enil phenylalanil glutamilycyl cysteinil glutamil 3-enil tryptophyll methanoyl glutamoyl panoyl alanoyl oil valoyl glutaminol treonoyl glutaminilicyl valil glutamilycyl cyril glycyl asparaginil pterosyl glutaminil histidilycyl glutaminil arginilyl histidil glutamilycyl phenylalanil glutamil methanoyl panoyl alanyl cyrilaginil glutaminilicyl histidil serilycyl salicylycyl aspartyl glycyl glutaminil arginilycyl glutaminil glycyl glutaminil valil aspartyl arginil aspartyl glutamil phenylalanil asparaginil salicylycyl 3-enil cyril asparaginil gluta. Minil tryptophyll glutaminil glycyl valilycyl arginil glutaminil glycyl aspartyl cyril glutaminil glutaminil tryptophyll glutaminil arginil pterosyl arginil glutam. Methanoyl alanoyl glutamoyl oil arginoyl oil tryptopyl oil valoyl glutamil valil cyril pterosylycyl prylyl methanoyl ceroyl oil ceroyl valil prylylycyl glutaminil alanil arginil 3-enil sulfanylalanil aspartyl glutamil valil glutaminil phenylalanilicyl glutamilycyl valil phenylalanil glutaminil glycyl cyril pterosylycyl 3-enil valil glutamilalanil glycylycyl glutaminilicyl Lucil cyrilalanil aspartyl cyril glycylalanil glutamilalanil glutamilycyl glutamilycyl tryptophylloscyl cyrilalanil cyril methanoyl arginoyl oil glutam. Inilycyl aspartyl tryptophyll glutamilycyl cysteinil glycylycyl aspartyl cyrilucyl glutamilycyl 3-enil phenylalanilicyl cyril glutaminil prylyl aspartyl histidil glutamil lucyl histidilanil glutaminil methanoyl arginoyl oil glutamilycyl asparaginil valil glycyl cyril tryptophyll 3-enil aspartyl 3-enil glutaminil cyrilucyl aspartyl 3-enil cyrilalanil pterosylycyl cyrilalanil aspartyl cyrilucyl asparaginil glutamilaginil valil glutamilycyl glutaminil tryptophyll glutamilycyl cysteinil histidyl glutaminil cyrilucyl glutaminil glycyl asparaginil glutamil tryptophyll alanil valilphenyl alanil cyril glutamilycyl asparaginil cysteinil glutamil tryptophylloscyl 3-enil glutaminil methanoyl glutamoyl ceroyl oil valoyl ceroyl glutaminil asparaginil glycyl aspartylycyl glutamil glutamilm. Phenylacyl glutamilycyl aspartyl pterosyl glutaminil glutamilycyl glutaminil asparaginil glutaminil methanoyl oil glutamoyl Roginylosylalinyl Cyril histidyl glutamyl sarilisylinyl Cyril glutamylisylosyl glutamyl terasilysylosyl glycylsyl valilysporiginylus pataloginyl tryptophyl glutaminyl histidylosylosyl aspartylosylysyl Alanylylinyl valilysylisylosylysyl glutamyl 3-anylosyl valanylyl valal glutaminyl glutaminylosyl aspartylosyl asparaginyl methanoyl cereal cyrilosyloginyl 3-anyl tryptophylosyl alanyl histidylosylosyl glutami. Cyril glutamylosylalynylysyl pralilysylosyl valylterosyl aspartyl cyril cystenyl asparaginyl cyril glutamylosyl glutaminyl arginylysylosyl asparaginyl glutaminyl glutaminyl arginyl. Aspartylosyl glutamilysyl histidyl cyril 3-anyl glycyl valanylyl cyril valilysyl asparaginylosyl cystenyl glutamyl valilysylosyl histidyl aspartyl cystenyl aspartyl alanyl cystenyl alanyl 3-anyl aspartyl alanyl glutamyl. Cystenyl aspartyl cyrilysylosyl glutaminyl alanyl 3-anyl arginyl asparaginylosyl aspartyl arginyl tryptophyl arginyl asparaginyl acylyl cystenyl alanyl methanoyl ceroyl metionoyl glutamoyl arginoyl oil. Isolysyl glutamyl 3-anyl tryptophyloginylosyl glutaminylysyl phenylalanylysyl aspartyl terasyl cyril arginyl phenylalanyl glutamyl aspartyl tryptophylosylysyl cyril glutamyl arginyl 3-anyl Nililanyl phenylanyl prylyl cyril glycyl valilysylosyl terasyl thuranyl valanylysyl glutamilyl phenylalanyl glutamyl phenylanyl glutaminyl valyl histidyl glutamyl cystine. Lucyl 3-anyl glutaminylosyl asparaginylosyl glutaminyl terasyloginyl arginyl glutamyl asparaginyl 3-anyl aspartyl cyrilalanyl cystenyl glutaminyl methanoyl var. Lil histidyl glutamyl glycyl asparaginyl glutaminyl arginyl tryptophyl aspartyl asparaginylosyl glutaminylysyloginyl valyl 3-anyl cyrilysylosyl arginylogynylosyl histidyl phenylanylysylosyl glycyl glutaminyl arginy. Glutamyl phenylanyl glutamyl 3-anyl arginyl aspartyl cyrilysylosyl valyl tryptophylosyl 3-anyl glutamyl methanoyl aspartyl oil glutaminylosyl 3-anyl asparaginylosyl glutamyl histidyl phenylalanyls. Iryl glutamyl cystenyl aspartyl valyl glutaminylysyl 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 cyrilosyl asparaginyl histidyl asparaginylysyl glutamyl glutaminyly. Salicylyl glutaminylysyl glutaminylysyl cyril glutamyl prylylosyl aspartyl glutaminylysyl aspartyl arginyl teras. Cystenyl glutaminyl valyl phenylanyl glycyl arginyl valyl glutaminyl terasyl histidyl prylyl aspartyl glutamyl histidyl aspartylosyl cyril aspartyl arginyl glue. Tamylosyl aspartyl cyrilyl cyril aspartylosyl histidyl tryptophyl histidyl aspartyl arginyl cyrilyl aspartyl cyril prylyl cyril asparaginylosyl cyril. Lucyl cyrilosylalynyl glutaminyl cyril glutamyl glycylogynyl aspartyl 3-anyl prolylanyl cyril valyl aspartyl cyrilysyl glutamyl tryptophyl aspartyl histidyl aspartyl terasyl aspartyl. Lucyl cyrilogynyl aspartylosyl glutamyl cyrilynyl methanoyl ceroyl arginoyl olanylysyl prylyl cyril glutamyl aspartyl glutamyl glutaminyl aspartyl phenylanyl terasylosyl arginyl glycylanyl vol. Ilanylysyl cyril glycyl aspartyl histidyl cyrilynylysyl glycylysyl aspartyl cyrilogynyl phenylanyl glutaminyl thur. Anyl glutaminyl asparaginylosyl arginyl cyrilysyl 3-anyl glycyl glutaminylosyl aspartyl 3-anyl cyril terasylysyl glycyl terasyl methanoyl oil glutamoyl oysterinoyl ceroyl saw. Lucyl aspartyl cyril valilysyl arginylosyl glutamyl histidylysyl glutamyl cyrilosyl glycyl phenylanyl valyl asparaginylosyl histidyl cyril 3-anyl glutaminyl 3-anyl glutaminyl 3-anyl. Lanil glycyl vanillosyl aspartyl arginyl tryptophyl glutamylosylosyl glutaminyllanil glutaminilla lanilosyl cyrillosyl glutamilysyl arginyl methanylysyl glutaminil asparaginylosyl glutaminylsyl tryptophyl glutaminyl glut. Aminyl phenylanil asparaginyl cyril aspartylosyl asparaginyl cyrillosyl tryptophylanil tryptophylosyl glycyl aspartyl 3-arnyl glutamyl glutamylosyl glutaminyllosyl glutaminylaginalysyl glutamilysyls. Aryl 3-anyl aspartylysylosyl glutaminyl 3-anylysolysyl glutamilysyl glutaminylsylosyl glutamilysyl glutaminylysyl alanyl vanil aspartyl histidyl arginylysyl alanylysylosyl cyrillosyl Silasparaginylosyl cystinyl cyril prylyl glutamyl phenylanil 3-anyl glutaminyllanil aspartyl cyrillosyl glutamyl cyril arginyl aspartylosyl glutaminyl aspartyl arginylosyl cyril glutaminyl methanoyl asparaginoyl glyoyl arginoyl troip. Tophylaspartyl arginyl valyl cystinyl cyrillosyl glutamyl glutamyl tryptophylaginyl glycylosyl glutaminyl aspartyl alanylysyl methanoyl glutaminyl cystinyl glutaminyl glycyl phenylanil histidyl glutamyl methanoyl ceroyl. Histidyl glycylosyl methanoyl oil glutamoyl asparaginoyl oil aspartyl arginylysyl asparaginyl glutamilysolysyl valyl prylylosyl aspartyl cyril asparaginylosyl aspartyl alanyl glutamilysolyl Utaminyl aspartyl histidylysyl glutaminylosyl methanoyl glutaminoylysyl histidyl glutamilysyl glutamyl cyril glutaminylysyl arginyl vanillanil cyrillosyl glutaminyl aspartyl methanoyl ceroyl oysterenoyl glutam. Inylosylosyl valyl asparaginyl glutamyl glycyl 3-anyl aspartyl cystinylosyl glutamilyl valyl histidyl valylosylosyl glycyl asparaginyl arginylosyl glutamyl valyl cerilla. Rogenyl histidylysyl glutamilysyl aspartyl valyl cyril glutaminyl aspartylosyl cyril tryptopyl cyril alanyl aspartyl glutamilysyl aspartyl 3-anyl cyril glycyl cyril. Valyl cyril prylyl 3-anyl cyril glycylaginyl cyril 3-anyl prylyl asparaginyl arginyl glutaminylysyl 3-anyl prylylaginyl glycylysyl cystinyl cyrillosyl cyril glutaminyl prylyl cyril cyril prylyl histidyl cerilla. Rogenyl cyril 3-anylysyl glycyl cyril aspartyl cyril glutamyl prylyl glycylaginyl cyril glycylaginyl glycyl phenylalanylysyl phenylalanylaginyl valylosyl arginyl alanyl alanylysyl prylylosyl. Glutaminylysyl alanyl cystinylysyl valyl prylyl methanoyl ceroyl glutamoyl aspartyl tyrosyl cyril cystinyl alanylysyl cyril asparaginyl phenylalanyl alanyl argin. Cyril phenylanil histidyl prylyl methanoyl oil arginoyl tyrosyl treonoyl asparaginyl glycyl prylyl prylylosine.